Withdrawal can be healthy and a time of safety. It could be a point where you're reflecting and renewal and rest and restoration. But when it's tipping from protective into painful, you're going to see things like a feeling of invisibility or feeling frozen, like you want to reach out, but you don't know how. And so finding safe ways that are low pressure that you can reestablish connection with people becomes very important. Do you want to achieve your goals, but anxiety is tripping you up? Like to keep those fun weekend plans, but depression has you counseling again? Hey, I'm Lori, dog mom, lover of nature, and hygge enthusiast. Positive psychology skills help me overcome chronic severe PTSD. If you're ready to learn how to overcome your anxiety and depression and rediscover happiness and purpose in life, then get your cozy on and let's get started. Welcome back to Practical Solutions for PTSD. If this is a kind of environment that you're really enjoying and learning a lot from, let me encourage you to join our Facebook community. There's going to be things that are posted on there that will only be available to the Facebook group and our email distribution list. So if you go to Overcoming Depression and Anxiety, use positive psychology to overcome PTSD, you can join our Facebook group. It's free. It is private, so you will have to be approved. But we'll get that done and get you hooked up. You'll be able to learn more, engage with a community of like mind, have lots of fun with us there. Again, look for Overcome Depression and Anxiety. Use positive psychology to combat PTSD. We'll get you hooked up and you'll be able to join the rest of us. One of the classic symptoms of PTSD is a tendency towards social withdrawal, which can lead to isolation. And a lot of this is because the nervous system is already exacerbated and stressed, and so handling social engagement can be very difficult and stress that system even further. Some of it could be the cause of the PTSD. If it was tied to people, that can make the engagement even harder because it could be triggering to those PTSD symptoms that you have tied back to the trauma. Specific situations, but social isolation is very common, or social withdrawal is common in PTSD. And it's one symptom that I had very strongly. I mean, just pulling back from people and not being able to handle it hardly at all, especially in the wintertime. And that's because you're coupling the PTSD with seasonal affective disorder and can actually increase those symptoms or deepen them exponentially when they're paired together. And I've dealt with seasonal affective disorder since I can remember in my 20s and possibly before then, I don't know, but for a long time before I had PTSD. And so you put the two together, and winter times were times I had a really hard time engaging with people for a variety of reasons. And so social withdrawal would quickly lead into isolation and failure to have real meaningful contact with people for weeks at a time, sometimes months at a time. Some social withdrawal is not a bad thing. And this could be a time when you're restoring and refreshing and renewal and some introspection that we're developing new goals and improvement or whatever you're going to do. That's not necessarily a bad thing. And it's also, there's some degree of that which is very normal in the wintertime. They actually tell you to stay home during some storms and bad times, and you want to just kind of sit around the fire or someplace that's warm and cozy down with a book because it's too cold to go outside or whatever that could be. And so there's some of that that's very normal, and there's nothing wrong with this. Where we want to be careful is social withdrawal can quickly turn into isolation, which is painful. It may feel very comfortable and very familiar, but it is also painful because you feel very alone and isolated, thus isolation. But you feel very alone and cut off from people. And sometimes you get to the place you feel like people don't really care. If you fell off the face of the earth, it wouldn't matter to anyone. And so we want to avoid that if possible. And if you're there, we want to try to help you get out of that. But do it in such a way that it's not going to cause you even more anxiety. Because I know when I started re-engaging with people, 3-4 years ago, when I was just really, really bad, when I did engage with them, I had to be very careful in that engagement. One person, maybe two. If I did go to church, I sat clear in the back. I would purposely show up late for service and leave as soon as the last amen was said or even before, because I couldn't handle engaging with people, but I did want to be back in church. So doing it very slowly and understanding, and thankfully God gave me some fantastic church family who was super understanding and worked with me really well on this, and some really close friends that helped with that. So there are some indications that you might need to take some steps towards social engagement, but you need to do that in such a way that is safe and isn't going to stress your nervous system to the point of causing damage. And so there's some things we're going to look at today about some indications that you might need to engage, and also some things that help you know that where you are, it's normal and it's okay. So some withdrawal is healthy, as I mentioned earlier. This could be a time of rest, of solitude, less social demand. So the problem isn't with the withdrawal itself, it's when that withdrawal turns into isolation. And when isolation doesn't feel peaceful, when it feels heavy. You know that feeling when the days begin to blur together and time kind of loses shape and you don't really have a good sense of what's going on, and loneliness settles quietly and it becomes very familiar. There's a song by Reba McEntire that I heard years ago, and it's "I Learned to Be Lonely." I don't know if that's the title of the song itself, but I know that that's the theme of the song is learning to be lonely, and you learn that becomes very familiar. The isolation becomes very familiar, and that's what you're comfortable with. It hurts and you want people to be there, but you don't know how to do it anymore because the isolation and loneliness has become what your existence has looks like, what is safe to you. And so you have to very gently and very carefully reintroduce engagement in such a way that it doesn't further threaten your system, which is already overwhelmed. And you don't want to do that. Connection doesn't have to mean huge gatherings. So as I mentioned earlier, when I started re-engaging with people, the huge gatherings were just so overwhelming, I could hardly handle them. In fact, I would avoid them like the plague, largely, sometimes for weeks and months at a time. So learning how to re-engage and doing so carefully and safely was really important. So it doesn't have to mean talking a lot at the very beginning. You don't have to show up being happy and cheerful or, quote, being on. You know how you feel like you have to be on in certain crowds. You don't always have to do that. Sometimes it's just a matter of showing up and maybe not talking to a single person, but you showed up, and that in by itself is progress. Even if it means showing up on the edge of the crowd and that's it. It could be just a simple text exchange. Somebody text you and ask you how you're doing, and you actually reply in a halfway timely manner and let them know that you appreciate them reaching out and that you're doing however, being honest. You can have a conversation in low voices. It doesn't have to be a super high energy conversation. You can just sit there quietly and share information. You could also have some time together that is a joint activity. So it's not all focused on trying to engage socially. Maybe you're, going for a hike together, or you're getting together to do some crafts, or you're, getting together to work on a specific project. So there's some activity involved, but you're still with people. So it means like we have a work day coming up at church. So maybe it's something that you're showing up to help with a work day. So you're still engaged with people, but you're staying active. So you don't have to constantly trying to engage socially, but you're showing up and you're being there. So you don't have to override your nervous system to be connected with people. You can design some activities that are low pressure. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be something that you can handle and tolerate. So there are a few signs in the middle of your isolation that might tip you to the fact that you need to start engaging with people. One of those signs is you begin to feel invisible rather than rested. So there's a time when being by yourself is fantastic, but when you start feeling like nobody is seeing you, that's a warning sign that you need to start working on doing some low-level connection. Or you want connection, but you feel frozen about reaching out. You don't know how to reestablish that. You don't know what to do to connect to people, but there's something inside of you that's longing for that. Another sign is that you assume others don't want to hear from you. And trust me, I've been there, found out I was very wrong. There's a lot of times when people that don't have trauma, but they're supporting others that do, friends and family, they want to give you the space that you need to heal. They don't always know when to reach across that divide and make connection. And so when you're in that withdrawal phase and your isolation phase, it's easy to feel like people don't want to hear from you. Another sign is that when you feel more numb than calm. So you're not really, the isolation isn't helping you to calm down or to feel better. It's actually numbing those emotions. So these aren't signs that there's something wrong with you and you have character flaws. They're just cues that you need to start connecting with people. We are social creatures. God made us to be a community, to be with people. We need people on certain levels. And so when we're alone too much, we start seeing some of these cues, and it's a gentle prompt like, hello, you need to start connecting with people. Not to criticize yourself, but there are some things that you need to do to connect with people. So I'm going to give you 5 ways that you can have some low pressure options for how to connect and break through some of that isolation. So first is to choose low exposure connection. And this could be a text message, voice notes, or share online space could be enough. I know when I was working at home, we were in the height of COVID and everybody was teleworking. I loved that because there wasn't as much pressure to engage all the time in the office, but I had enough engagement through meetings that it kept me from getting into that isolation with the whole withdrawal isolation thing. And we'd have daily meetings with the team and weekly engagement, and I was always connected with the team either through messaging or through video calls. And so it was low pressure, low exposure connection. And I was able to do that connection without having, the pressure constantly for, the full workday. And it works really, really well. And so I have also done that with family and friends, text messaging, whatever it is, email, to be able to stay connected without having a high pressure on demand on your nervous system. The second way is to lower the bar for presence. And I mentioned this earlier, but you don't have to show up being, the Energizer Bunny. You can just be there. You don't need updates or energy from both yourself or the other person. Maybe just send them a simple note saying, I'm thinking of you. I don't need a whole, 5-page dissertation on what's going on in your life. I don't need to share a 5-page dissertation, but I can let you know that I'm thinking about you. I haven't forgotten you, and I'm still connected on some level. The third is to let others come to you and to be able to respond. So responding is a form of connection. It may not be something you're initiating, but it is still connecting. So when other people contact you, you're responding back to them. Doesn't mean you have to respond, with this huge long text, but at least let them know that you received the message, you heard them, you appreciate it, whatever it could be. It could be a quick response, but you're responding to the people that are reaching out to you. The fourth way is to pair connection with something regulated. So I mentioned this earlier that you don't have to, like going to a church work day or you're going for a hike or whatever that could be. But it's where you're doing something that helps regulate your nervous system at the same time that you're being with people, which is stretching your nervous system a little bit. So you're putting the two together. So it could be a walk, it could be going for coffee, it could, crafting, just sitting quietly, maybe listening to a story, reading some books together, whatever that could be. It could be a low pressure activity, something that helps regulate your nervous system, but something that you can do with someone at the same time. And for some ideas, you can go back through some of our Hygge episodes and what works well with you personally for kind of get you into that calm zone, and then just put someone in with that so you can do that together. The fifth thing is to explain to people, hey, this is all I can handle right now. I'm just not in a position to be able to deal with people. I'm going to be quieter during this season, like specifically if you're dealing with the winter, like winter months are just not months I'm going to be high engagement. It's going to be low engagement for me. So we're going to try to dial down the pressure a little bit. Don't expect me to show up at all the parties. I will be to some of them, but I'm not going to be there for all of them. And this is, you don't have to over-explain yourself, but just enough so they understand you're not ghosting them. This is just a time you're going to be stepping back a little bit. So if this season, particularly if you have like seasonal depression coupled with post-traumatic stress syndrome, or you're just dealing with PTSD that's kind of leading you towards that little bit of isolation, Wanting less contact does not mean you don't want any connection at all. It just means you want safer connection. And that's okay. You don't have to isolate yourself. You don't have to perform to belong. You can stay connected on your terms, at your pace, in ways that respect your nervous system. So your challenge for this week is to find one low-pressure way of engaging with friends and family in your life. Just one. Doesn't have to be super complicated, something that's low pressure, easy for you to do, but keeps you engaged and keeps you out of that isolation zone. A quick reminder to join our Facebook community. Go to Overcome Depression and Anxiety. Use positive psychology to combat PTSD. Put a request in, we'll get you approved and set up. Look forward to seeing you there. Hey, my friend, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, would you please take 30 seconds and share it with someone you know who may be struggling with depression and anxiety? Also, would you please leave a quick review for the show? Knowing how this podcast is helping you fills my heart with so much joy, and it motivates me for future episodes. For now, it's time for Sam and I to head outside to enjoy some sunshine and fresh air. We'll see you back here on Tuesdays and Thursdays for more great episodes.